Putin News Now. Putin is in trouble because Russia's armed forces are low on missiles. Russia has launched 2 missile strikes in the last few days against Ukraine. It had been nearly 2 months since the last assault. The strikes were largely meaningless, despite the fact that they killed and injured innocent people. However, they also reveal the evolution of Russia's missile strategy in its conflict with Ukraine over time. Forced submission via missile barrage. When the Ukrainian counteroffensive in September succeeded beyond all expectations, freeing hundreds of square miles of territory and dozens of major urban centers in just a few days, the Russian military made a leadership change. General Sergei Surovikin, head of the Russian Aerospace Forces, was named by Russian President Vladimir Putin to lead the special military operation in Ukraine. As head of the Russian Air Force, Surovikin naturally favored a new long-range fires campaign to coerce Ukraine into talks. The Kremlin believed that cutting off the Ukrainian power grid would increase the pressure on Kyiv to negotiate before the upcoming harsh winter. Since the beginning of October, the Russian military has fired over 1,300 ballistic and cruise missiles at various targets across Ukraine, including key infrastructure and major population centers. The findings were inconsistent. Millions of Ukrainians lost access to basic utilities like electricity, heat, water, and the internet as the country's power grid crashed. The random bombings resulted in the deaths of hundreds more people. But the Ukrainians held firm. And the Russian missile offensive accomplished nothing. The Russian military resumed its cruise missile attacks on Ukrainian cities in late April and early May after a hiatus of several weeks. Ukraine's military intelligence had predicted that Russia was running low on long-range missiles, and this attack proved their prediction correct. When compared to previous missile attacks, which typically involved in the range of 80 munitions in a single attack, the two attacks used a combined total of fewer than 50 cruise missiles, primarily Kh-101 and Kh-555 munitions. Russia's armed forces are down to only a few hundred ballistic and cruise missiles of all types, according to a November estimate by the Ukrainian military intelligence. Recent Ukrainian estimates indicated that Russian forces had used up more than 85% of certain types of munitions from their pre-invasion stockpiles. The Russian military uses a variety of ballistic and cruise missiles, including the Iskander, Kh-22, 32, Caliber, and Kh-155. Because of dwindling supplies, the Russian military has begun employing weapons originally intended for other purposes, like the S-300 air defense system or the S-4 kitchen anti-ship missiles, against ground targets. Sanctions imposed by the West make it difficult for Moscow to restock. So, the Kremlin has asked its allies for support. Iran has given Russia over 2,000 of its Shahed-136 suicide drones and sent experts to train the Russian military on how to use them. The Shahed-136 loitering munition has allowed Russian forces to confuse Ukrainian air defenses and force them to expend costly air defense munitions to shoot down dirt-cheap drones while costing significantly less than a ballistic or cruise missile. Unfortunately for the Iranians, the Russian military has already destroyed the majority of their drones. To disrupt Kyiv's impending counteroffensive, the Russian military has shifted its missile strategy from hitting vital Ukrainian infrastructure to hitting key military functions like logistical nodes and deployment centers. However, due to a lack of resources, it can only do so much. Stavros Atlamazoglu, a veteran of the Hellenic Army, national service with the 575th Marine Battalion and Army HQ, and a graduate of Johns Hopkins University, writes a column on defense and national security for 1945. His articles have appeared in such publications as Business Insider, Sandbox, and SOFREP.